So here we go. How can law firms and all of us as women cultivate a realistic work-life balance? And we ought to have some discussion around what that means, right? Because I know that means a lot of different things to different people.
I can kick it off, Donna.
Thank you, Jenna.
I don't know if I read this. I'm sure I didn't make it up, or someone told me earlier in my career, and I remember telling it to you when you came back from leave with Abby. For me personally, I feel like the balance is not that I'm always going to be 100% at work and I'm going to be 100% at home. And so recognizing that sometimes I'm going to be a better employee and maybe not so great of a mom or a wife or a friend or a whatever you want to call it. And then other days I'm going to be really awesome at those things, and that there's really only 100% of my time and I can't give it to everything equally. And so as long as I try to balance those things of not always being good at just one and neglecting the other, that's kind of the best that I've found. And so I remember when Liz came back, and it's hard when you come back, like you're trying to figure out childcare and you're trying to figure out like all of the things and missing your baby and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, right now, you don't need to be 100% the best talent acquisition manager in the whole wide world. Like right now, you've got other things going on. It's a balance. You know what I mean? So,
have you guys heard the glass fall theory?
No.
I can't remember. I don't remember who came up with it. It's not my original idea. I'm going to put that out there. But it was basically this idea that you have all these balls in the air all the time, but they're not work and family. They are, I have this agreement. I need to get back to the client by end of day tomorrow. I have my daughter's field trip that I'm, chaperoning on Friday. I have my daughter's an orthodontist appointment. She's going to so all of these different things are in the air all the time. Some of them are rubber. If you drop them, they will bounce. It's not that big of a deal. But other ones are glass and they will shatter if you drop them. And so every day is a matter of figuring out, what balls do I have in the air? Which ones are glass? Which ones are okay if I drop them and they bounce back tomorrow? And which ones are not? And then it's a matter of, occasionally you're going to have 2 glass balls in the air. One of them's going to drop. But, it's always a matter of figuring out. It's not just, how do I balance work and life? It's all of the little things that make up work and all of the little things that make up life, and which is okay to, let go or wait till tomorrow and which cannot.
So what I think, go ahead. What I think has been a nice shift in discussing work-life balance since I was a baby attorney to now as a little bit more seasoned, more years than I'd like to count, is, I can get really mad about the patriarchy. And so how, like, no one would ever ask a man, how's your work-life balance? But that's never a question that someone's going to be like generally asking of a man. But I have felt like there has been a shift, and particularly here, when talking to a lot of the other male attorneys, they bring up their kids and they talk about coaching baseball, and they talk about, oh yeah, this one was sick, so I was later. I was talking to Sean Campbell yesterday, and we were, he's got like tiny, like a 17-month-old, I think, and mine are 10 and 7 now, but we were joking about like hand, foot, and mouth. And he's like, actually, my interview at the firm had to be postponed because I got hand, foot, and mouth from my kid. And so, but it was just, those conversations didn't happen in 2010 when I was a baby attorney. It was like, those weren't approached then. And so it's nice that at least now it feels like everyone is worried about work-life balance. So I think that makes it easier for women whenever it's not just a women's issue. It can be everyone's issue.
And I think it's more talked about now too. It used to be the old adage that you need to work as though you don't have kids, and you need to parent as though you don't have a job. And I don't think that's so much the case anymore. I mean, depending on where you work, obviously, but I think it's much more acceptable to say, hey, I had to cut out early. I have XYZ for my kid, or, I came in late this morning because I had parent-teacher conferences, things like that. I think that's a lot more acceptable. And on the flip side, my kid sits and watches TV while I have to finish up an agreement sometimes.
I think it's important, too, to remember that, like, work-life balance today is going to look different 2 years from now and look different from 2 years ago or 4 years ago. And being willing to go, what worked before isn't going to continue working for me. I used to be able to work until 8 o'clock at night, and that was totally fine. I could stay at the office, and that was okay. But now I prefer to be able to go home earlier, be able to have dinner with my family. And then if I need to get back online or finish a deal later at night, it's not a big deal. I'll just wait till my kid's in bed. As opposed to, you know, before I was married and before my stepdaughter lived with me, at that point, it didn't matter when I was working. I could come in late, I could stay late, I could work all weekends, and it had no impact on anyone else. And you have to be willing to accept that and go, okay, I need to make an adjustment. And yeah, you know, explain that to the other people that you're working with. What worked for the last 10 years that you've been working with me, sorry, not going to work right now. Things have to change.
You know, as someone who started her career in-house and then went into the public sector and then spent the last, I don't know how many years with law firms, one of the big advantages, and I'm the oldest person in this room, working for a law firm was even before this whole work-life balance thing was a thing, I could leave the office at 3:00 with my technology, which at the time was a BlackBerry, right? I could leave the office at 3:00 and go watch my son's junior high basketball game, you know, assuming that I didn't have some mandatory client thing. And that's, I think, an advantage that's even enhanced now that, you know, you can schedule sometimes, not always, you can schedule around things that are occurring during the business day to go do things with family or for yourself in a way that I don't think you could do 20 years ago, maybe.
Even 5 years ago.
Or you,
I mean, again, I was at a different firm 5 years ago, but it was a lot harder there. And then to just say, I'm going to take 2 hours out of my day to do this.
Yeah. And it took a lot of courage to do it. Like I used to think, oh, I got to step out of the office and I hope nobody sees me. Or, even though I knew I wouldn't, it was fine. It's just great to have that luxury. I think.
And now saying, I am going to go home and I'm going to do something with my kid, or I have a doctor's appointment, instead of being like, I have a client meeting and then like awkwardly trying to leave. And then you're like, I don't have a client meeting. I'm going to school. So yeah, having that freedom to just make it, this is what I'm doing, and I'll go home and I'll work later, or I'll pull, you know, out a couple hours this weekend.
As a non-professional, it is different. The pandemic was everything. Because now a non-professional couldn't leave for 2 hours and be with their child or whatever. So the pandemic did for me what I needed when my boys were younger. But they're older now. But to be at lunch and to be able to get up and make dinner for your family and then come back and sit at your computer, you know, that made a huge difference.
That was like the one good thing that came out of the COVID pandemic was remote work. Being able to work, and everyone having, like, the old guard having to realize, oh wait, they're not lying. This does actually work. Like,
so
because
to
I think
your point, when I was on the executive committee during COVID, you weren't at the firm around. So all the older attorneys were totally against remote work pre-COVID.
Oh, absolutely.
So then COVID happens, and then all of our older attorneys like, this is like awesome. So it really helped with the hard sell. All of a sudden it was like, hey, I really sort of like this. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
We're remote work and working in soft pants.
And not everyone, no one else had makeup on and they're gray moving out. And they're all staggered together.
You're like, if you want an 8:00, that's fine, but you're getting whatever it is that I'm wearing. Yeah, it's okay with me.
And it changed everything. So billing is completely remote because we could not find a biller that was willing to come into an office. And so we had to open it up to get new hires, which opened it up for the department. So soft pants every day. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd have my job here if it wasn't for remote work, because the rest of the healthcare groups in Harrisburg, and they would have certainly not hired someone in the Pittsburgh office if they hadn't gotten used to, everyone's going to be virtual and this will be fine. And
And I think it's to the benefit of companies as well, because like you said, it's not only opened up the door for additional employees or additional options, but I mean, when I first had kids, this was not a thing. Remote work was not a thing. And so if my daughter was sick, my husband and I would decide who's taking the day off, or are we going to split the day? You'll come home at lunch and I'll go into the office for the afternoon. But it was still, we had to take time away from work.
Take time.
Whereas, which you still have to do, I think, when your kid is very young and can't just, be planted in front of Sesame Street for the day. But, once they reach toddler age, you can do some stuff from home and you don't have to just take the day off.
So a lot of firms now are forcing 5 days a week and not this 5 days a week, which I think is a competitive advantage for us. What do you think is driving that decision for those firms? And what do you think we are doing better or differently that is not driving us to try to make the same decisions?
So I think what's driving it is a desire for a collaboration and culture, right? I came from in-house, and I know a lot of the corporate legal departments are making a push to bring their people back in 5 days a week. And I think that it's derived from a concern that those organizations are losing their culture because people are not collaborating in person anymore. And the opportunities even to collaborate remotely are different. And you have to be very intentional about creating them. And I think it's more of an issue for younger people, especially younger lawyers who are entering the profession, to not have that regular in-person contact. I think it does limit the opportunity for development and growth unless you have somebody who's managing that younger talent who is being very, very intentional about collaboration and opportunities. So I think that's what's driving it. And I think the reason McNees is able to not mandate that is because McNees is very intentional about creating collaboration and creating collaborative opportunities and opportunities for whether it's through reach, whether it's through, the individual offices, whether it's through practice groups, whether it's through women attorneys or whatever the group is that the executive committee has set the tone for a culture that fosters collaboration and fosters intentional opportunities for collaboration.
Yeah, I think some of it's just laziness on the part of people not wanting to make hard decisions. That was definitely the shift, because I was in corporate America before, like Allison, before coming here, and we were fully remote, and I'd had the experience of having to build an entire team again, like fully remote because of a reorganization. So we had proved we could all do this, and then because things were not working well at the company, or people, it's because everyone's at home, so let's bring everyone back in. It's a very easy solution. And I think that for a lot of law firms too, because we've talked about this a lot in Reach in terms of employee engagement, it is really, I think, because I had to do it, you can do all of the culture stuff remotely. It takes intention, and it takes work and effort. You can't yell out of your office door and ask someone to come in your office. You have to make the time. So in my mind, I'm sure that there are firms that have reasons for it. And I think it makes sense that if you have young attorneys coming in, or brand new attorneys, then you need to be intentional and say, hey, I am in charge of you. I'm your managing partner. I'm going to be in the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'd like you to be there too. And just make those. But that's hard for people to have to make a plan, and it's hard, and it takes a lot of effort, but I think you have to do it. And I think it is such a competitive advantage to us. Because I can't imagine going back to a 5 days a week in the office job. I wouldn't do it.
I think McNees largely, and again, I've only been in McNees post-pandemic and post-Pittsburgh joining McNees, but I get the sense that McNees started expanding to more areas around the time of the pandemic or shortly thereafter. And so I think that to some degree helped spur.
I don't know that that's...
Maybe it's just unique to my experience because most of my practice...
That certainly wasn't intentional.
But
It just might have been...
I just think it might have helped the willingness to be remote.
I mean, Lancaster was open long before the pandemic, and of course Columbus.
I remember a paint party when we joined. There was like a virtual paint party. We had just joined the firm. And, the pandemic was kind of ending. And we all thought that was so neat. Like, call in, we'll send you your paint supplies. And we were all virtual. And I'm like, wow, they're really reaching out to those that are at home and those in the other offices. I thought that was really...
And I've worked in law firms before that, early in my career, I worked for a firm that had a Pittsburgh office, but it was a Philadelphia firm. And there really was no intentional outreach to the satellite offices. And I think McNees does that well as in addition.
I came from a firm that had an office. I spent a lot of time in this very building, maybe even on this floor, I'm not sure. But you're right about that. I think that's a uniqueness about McNeese is the one firm concept and not, not thinking of every office as its own unique standalone entity, but everybody being part of one firm. And I think that took some time for the folks in Harrisburg to adjust to,
I think there's
who had to recognize that, gee whiz, I'm going to be working with an associate who's not down the hall from me or who's not down. And that took some adjustment and some cultural shift, but I think we've made a lot of progress in that direction.
Stay tuned for 2026 Reach.
Well,
just to
on that note,
continue.
Kara, and I'll open this up. What can we be doing better or differently, do you think, in that regard? Anything? I'm sure we can be.
I mean, I think continuing to encourage people to, when we're trying to build that one firm kind of concept, continuing to encourage everybody to visit the other offices. I think that's really valuable. I know right after I started at McNeese, I was trying to go to the Harrisburg office, at least where, there was a larger group of practitioners in real estate and construction. I was going there like every other month. And I still, try to make sure that I schedule opportunities to go to the other offices and just making sure that everybody understands and appreciates that that's available to you. And, it's like a solid drive to be able to drive Philadelphia to be able to meet with people in Radnor. But, you guys have been really supportive of making sure that, staying overnight at a hotel, that's fine. We would rather not have you try to drive back at midnight, those kinds of things. So that way those opportunities are available to the whole firm, associates, members, the whole shebang.
I tell people you're only as connected as you will allow yourself to be.
Yeah.
So they have all these things, but if you don't participate, it doesn't do you any good. So I agree, you have to. I was the first remote biller. I was the only biller outside of Harrisburg. So I was in Harrisburg a lot in the beginning, but I loved it because you got to meet so many people, and so it's funny. I was talking to Sarah yesterday and we're like, accounting and billing keeps moving, and why can't we? And she's like, why do you care? And I'm like, because I'm McNeese, like I thought about it. I was like, why do I care? And I'm like, because I'm McNeese, I was just like, I thought about it last night and I was like, I'm not there, when I am there, I want to be on a floor. So yeah, I love that one McNeese, because I feel it.
But it's like how things are changing. And I had this like wild realization the other day and I can't stop thinking about it. So Sarah's car drives itself. We're going to Maryland and she's in the driver's seat looking at me, talking, having a conversation. And her car's changing lanes and putting its finger on and slowing down and speeding up. And I'm just like, but it was really cool. And what I realized is like, I have little kids. They're 4 and 6. My kids are not going to have to learn how to drive. No. Isn't that wild to think about?
Yeah. They don't even have to parallel park.
They're not going to have. They're going to get in, push them around.
I know.
I don't like it.
Well, it makes me.
I mean, I'm a child of the 80s. I was a latchkey kid. Like, it was survive or die. And
drive a stick shift, don't you?
Yeah, I know how to drive a stick shift. I know how to shoot a gun. I know how to fish. I know how to, like, I don't know. There's a, what's the right word? I don't know, perception of too much reliance on a lot of other things. And I think that as a mom, go back to sort of the work-life balance, like that's where a lot of the pressure comes. So, like everyone's relying on you. So as a mom, as a employee, as a sister, a daughter, whatever, there's just this constant pressure that you need to help me get something done, or I need help getting this done. So I think sometimes I think as a society, we're shifting towards relying on everybody else and away from relying on ourselves.
I feel like now kids aren't writing anymore. They type or they ask the computer to write something for them, and it's like,
or they voice text.
They have a hard time communicating.
It looks very different. It feels very different the way that they're communicating. When half of it is like, you pick up your kid's phone, you're like, this is all emojis. And I don't even know. no idea what this says. Is this a sentence? And like the language is totally different. Although I'm sure people said the same thing about us during the 90s or the 80s or the 70s. But like, trying to get over, it feels like the language has changed so much more because it's not just, vernacular that's being used. The whole written language is totally different.
I think that's going to be a challenge that the firm, all businesses and the firm will face is, now I sound like an old curmudgeon, but like these kids don't have interpersonal skills.
So do you think that's going to impact how you develop client relationships? Because I'm seeing that a bit. You pick up your phone and call your client, or do you tend to write
text message with emojis?
Yeah. Your client is younger, so are they going to answer if you?
Well, I think you have to shift, but I think there is something to the art of, like, society will collapse if we all forget how to talk to each other in person. Like, there's just I feel like the pendulum will swing eventually, but I think that'll be a hard, I think that's just something that will have to be like a really dedicated focus as we onboard this now Gen Alpha or Gen Z, like, into Alpha, is, hey, have you ever talked face to face with someone before? Have you had a job interview in person before? Have you had to write a letter? But like things like that I think will still stick around in the legal profession, that you have to really, or even again, like business development skill, like speaking of business development skills, how do you know how to network? Because there's still, I don't think that networking events are going to ever die. There's always going to be conferences. There's always going to be those type of things. But if you've only ever communicated with people on your phone, like a cocktail hour is not going to go well. So,
everybody's like their phones.
I'm sorry. What's your room? Can I TikTok you? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not.
Wasn't the firm retreat so great though? Like opening that door.
Oh, the generation.
Because we can't put a wall up. It'd be like, you guys are always,
Oh no, yeah. I just think it's just a reality to face.
It is, yeah.
Like, I didn't ever think that I'd have to coach someone on how to shake someone else's hand at a cocktail hour and make chit chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's something we'll have to build into an onboarding program.
Exactly.
Is like those type of softer skills.
That generation coming in, I feel like, was stripped of that opportunity
With COVID.
right?
Took a lot.
Yeah. Like there's a serious need for upskilling and just being intentional about that development.
Have never read a check. Have never.
Don't know where to put a stamp.
Does not know how to. Yeah, put an address on an envelope, any of that, and will only talk. I was talking to someone and I was like, we were getting massages. I was like, did you reach them? They won't answer. And I said, did you leave a message for them to call you back? It never occurred to her to do it. And I'm like, so let's call back and let's leave a voicemail. And they called back. So, they're calling, they couldn't text. And so if we're always like, well, you guys never, but it's hard for them to talk. And I met a youth group and I was asking a girl, she's 13. I was like, what happened 5 years ago? She was 8. Everything just stopped. No one really explained it to them. Everything is a computer or a tablet, and we give it to them, or a phone. They don't have to talk. My mother calls them the Velcro shoe kids that raised them.
The what?
The Velcro shoe kids. We never taught them how to tie their shoes. We taught them that it was okay to not tie their shoes. And so the Velcro shoe children had children that are now through a pandemic. And so we stopped allowing teaching. You don't have to learn. Just zip them. My mother calls them the Velcro shoe kids. So now they have children, and it's hard. And we're in the workplace, and so give them the tablet, give them this. There's no communication. It's texting. It's even when you watch the news, there's typos in the news because we're LOL, where people don't know how to spell. But we never encouraged it. We stopped it. Yeah. Really deep, really.
No.
When we interview potential law clerks or externs, right, from law school, I find myself focusing a lot more. I always had, a preference for obviously someone that would be able to articulate themselves and carry themselves and present themselves well. But I find myself now, I'll look at the resume and I'm interested in what their experience, their work, or their legal experience was, but I'm going to make my decision by how they interact and how they're able to articulate and present themselves, because I do think that's important in the profession as a whole, being able to, right, communicate. That's the number one skill you have as a lawyer, whether you're communicating with your client, communicating with opposing counsel, communicating with the court. And if you can't do it from day one, it's going to be very, very hard to teach you how to do it. So I do think what you're saying, Tina, is just like, yes, you have to meet people where they are, but you can help them help.
That's all. It's just figuring out that we have to build that into development and not just judge it as a flaw.
Right.
Yeah. It's a deficit.
Here's some billers, and it's like, they're not understanding what I'm saying. I said, they don't know, so pick up the phone. You want me to call them? I do. I said, because you're 6 emails deep, and no one knows
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I want you to call them.
That's 3 emails.
And it's like, thank you for calling. And I was like, it's fine. But they're hesitant. They're hesitant. But they're willing to learn. And I said, so now we're not just teaching you billing. So what can you teach us? Because one girl did something with a spreadsheet. And I was like, what did you just do? Yeah. So teach us. Teach us. And we'll teach you the other stuff. We'll teach you how to talk to people and pick up the phone. But show me what you did with that spreadsheet. You know,
I've seen like the funny, like, I think I'm really leaning into like being now in the 40 category. But I saw something that's like, this generation of kids never had to talk to their friend's mom on the phone. Right? Like call someone's landline. Call someone and like have awkward chit chat with.
Or they've never gone up to a door and knocked on the door and had to ask for another kid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Buy Girls Night, please. Or can my friend come out to play? Because they didn't go out to play during like a substantive portion of their childhood. That wasn't a thing. You weren't going to other people's houses. You weren't participating.
They've got a headset on.
And everyone has their own cell phone, so they don't need to talk to Mrs. Foster, who was my 4th grade best friend, Chrissy Foster. Shout out. But yeah, like having to call and like have weird, awkward chit chat with a mom. But it's great.
She's upstairs. Give her a minute. And they like, it's just such a weird conversation.
Mine would just say, is Tina there? This is not Tina's house. You say, hello. May I speak to Tina? That's what my mother did to everybody.
That's not Tina's house.
Yeah, this is not Tina's house. Tina doesn't pay the phone bill. This is Tina's mother. And when you call, you say, hello, Mrs. Cox. May I speak to Tina, please? Oh, those were my friends. And then everyone's their friend. I was like, that's your friend? Yes. I said, you have 3,000 friends. What's his last name?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. But we're close. That's not your friend. So then you have to define what a friend is. You have no idea. That could be an 82-year-old man. So you have no idea who that is.
Oh, with the gaming, you mean?
Like, even on social media. Yeah. That's my good friend so-and-so. Your good friend. What is her last name? Wait a minute. I have no idea. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, Will?
We must do this more.